But in Albuquerque, somehow it is about 20,000 higher jobs compared to year 2000, so doing better than the rest of the country. But I would say that the Rocky Mountain states, going from New Mexico all the way to Colorado, Utah, Idaho, these are growth states. If one looks 40-year time span, which region of the country has seen more people from other states move into the region, it is the Rocky Mountain states. Be happy that you are not in Michigan. I just showed this, just to say that things may be tough here, but Michigan is just awful situation. The only good news is that the car industry is beginning to hire people. Things have turned around for Ford Motors, General Motors. So things perhaps has turned around in Michigan. On the opposite side of the Michigan is the Washington, D.C., where I am from. And every single day, I dread going to work. Not because I don't like my work. I love my work. I love running the numbers. I dread going to work because the traffic gets worse each day. And the reason why traffic gets worse each day is that there's too much hiring in Washington. And in fact, Washington is pretty much the only major city in the country where they are not feeling the recession. So every place I go, whether Albuquerque, Kansas City, St. Louis, wherever I go, there's economic recession, there's vacancies, retail vacancies, people are struggling, but in Washington, restaurants are full, people are happy walking down the sidewalk. So a little different mindset. Long-term job growth in Albuquerque, this is what I was talking about, the Rocky Mountain states over the long-term, great growth opportunities. So you have seen some stagnation over the past 5 years, no growth in the past 5 years, but once things come back to normal, anticipate continuing growth. And anytime there's growth, there's a demand for housing. Existing home sales, some fluctuation related to the tax credit impact, so big jump when the tax credit was right about to expire, and then big dip. But right now, through natural forces of job creation, low rates, it's trying to come back, settle down into more comfortable, sustainable levels. Hope you move into that direction. New Mexico, one also sees the tax credit impact. Higher sales when there was tax credit, then suddenly much lower sales once tax credit disappear. Any industry that relies on temporary stimulus like tax credit, which is temporary by definition, but if one was to have that for a very long time, it's implying that industry is very unhealthy. So that temporary measure should be temporary, and once the temporary time period finishes, it should be done and over with. Because we get a lot of questions from realtors, why don't we lobby hard to get a further extension on the tax credit? Because continuing extension is implying that the industry is very unhealthy. Regarding the median home price, a couple of markets, Las Vegas, one can see the huge bubble and bust. In Albuquerque, very minor housing market bubble situation. Distressed mortgages and distressed property will continue to hit the marketplace, so be ready to continue to work on foreclosed sales and short sales, because this is the legacy of past lending mistakes. There's a banker's axiom: all bad loans are made in good times. So during 2005, 2006, those were the bad loans that was made, but he has to go through the system, and unfortunately, with economic difficult times, there will be a very high level of foreclosed inventory, and looking at number of mortgages that are 60 days late, 90 days late is implying continuing high distressed property that will be coming onto the market. Shadow inventory, distressed property, I mentioned foreclosed property will be coming, but one aspect that is less discussed in the media is the shadow inventory of new homes coming onto the market. Any given month, any given year, there are new home construction and it comes to the market, but there's near record low home sale, new homes coming onto the market right now. And that's because, as the mayor pointed out, few new home construction that's occurring. So this is helping mitigate some of the shadow inventory that is often discussed. And housing start, very depressed levels. In Albuquerque, as the mayor mentioned, a very, very low level compared to what it was several years ago. Return to normalcy, that's all we are asking. So we had the bubble, then crash, let's just get back to normal. And are we reaching there? Well, first, home sales, looking at the long-term trend line, yeah, we are pretty much back to normal. We had that excess sales activity during the boom years, but now we are pretty much back to normal. And if anything, more precisely, we are still underperforming in relation to more normal activity. Home sales in relation to job. There's total number of jobs, how many homes turn over given that. So again, we are matching up with the historical average, so pretty much back to normal. Median prices. Show this chart to any elementary school student, and what will they say? They will say that hump was artificial, but that hump is removed. So in other words, we're back to the old trend line, back to normal. Home value in relation to the income. During the bubble years, it was a little bit wacky. Now it is back down, and in fact, home values, at least according to this measurement, is saying it is undervalued in relation to the income. Home value in relation to the construction cost. This implies that if you want to build a new home, buy the brick, buy the copper, buy the wiring, it's going to be more expensive than buying the same existing home that is out there right now. So the cost of construction has risen faster than what the home values are currently in the marketplace. So again, implying the bubble has been removed, the cost of construction is even higher than the current existing home values. So consumers need not fear for further price decline, at least on fundamentals. Only way that will drive home values down further from this point is not the fundamentals, but just the confidence and psychology. People just believe that home values will fall wrongly. But if everyone believes that way, they will stay on the fence. And if everyone stays on the fence, inventory piles up, automatically prices have to fall. So only thing that will drive prices down from this point is really about the psychology and the confidence. Credit market bubble is dead. So why did we have the housing market bubble? Is really about the credit market bubble. If the credit market bubble was non-existent, we would not have had the housing market bubble. Any young couple who want to buy $1 million home, 10, 20 years ago, the banks would say, you are crazy. Show me your employment history, show me your credit history, show me your income. That was the normal checks and balances. The credit market bubble erased that to say anyone with a heartbeat, here's a mortgage. So it was the credit market bubble that caused the housing market bubble. But some people are implying that somehow this housing market bubble was caused by mortgage interest deduction. Mortgage interest deduction has been in place for 100 years. How is it possible for 100 years it did not cause a bubble and suddenly in the past 10 years it suddenly came about? So it's not the case, and if somehow the mortgage interest deduction was removed completely, then home values can fall 15%, surely pushing us into another economic recession. And also FHA program is self-financing. Very good news out of FHA to say that they have never requested a single dime of taxpayers' money ever. When mortgage default on FHA mortgage, they can pay that off with the premium they collected. So the premium is always able to pay the default off in the history of the FHA program. Recent auditors' report indicate that FHA is sound. They will not be needing a taxpayer funding. But Fannie and Freddie is different. Fannie and Freddie should arouse some emotions in your blood, either positively or negatively. And only way I can describe Fannie and Freddie is the following. Fannie and Freddie, 30 and 40 years ago, they existed, but no one heard of them. In fact, you took out a mortgage and you say, well, I have my relationship with Bank of America or Citi or my community bank, and that was it. But Fannie and Freddie played a role back then, 30, 40 years ago. What was their role? Background role, very simple. Because of the implied government backing, they can borrow money cheaply and use that cheap borrow money to buy mortgages from Bank of America and others so they can pass on that low borrowing cost over to the consumers. So whatever interest rate it was, mortgage rate would be slightly lower so that middle-class Americans would have access to the home buying. People who want to stay within their budget. We want to have a sustainable home ownership, not the foreclosure situation. So that was their role 30, 40 years ago. But somehow from the 1990s, because of their private company status, they perceived that they can do things to just generate profit, and they created this huge hedge fund, what economists call the investment portfolio of Fannie and Freddie. It turned out well, huge profit for managers and the shareholders. Well, what we find out is that hedge fund can also collapse. And when it collapses, it is major financial loss, but the financial loss is on the taxpayers. So you have a system of private profit, taxpayer loss. Well, that's incompatible with any sense of fairness, so we cannot have that. It needs to be restructured, reorganized, some new entity, but NAR believes that there needs to be some government backing to assure that middle-class families can have access to mortgages not only during good times, but during bad times as well. This is a chart that you may want to show to your clients who are sitting on the sideline, that over the long haul, that homeowners do accumulate wealth. I know that people who bought it at the peak, they're losing wealth, they're underwater, but people who have been in their home 20, 30 years, they're still very positive wealth. So even, this is a Federal Reserve data up to 2007. 2010 data will be out next year, but my estimate is that, so there is some little decline, but renter wealth do not increase. They are just stuck, they're treading waters. But homeowners steadily improve, and I think there's a compelling affordability condition today. You buy a medium-priced home today, typical home, how much would you pay monthly based on the mortgage rate that is prevailing? So those are in 2005. In 2010, one sees that it's much better bargain today to buy a typical house in the local markets. So my baseline outlook is that we are going to have some moderate growth, not robust growth, about 1.5 million. I would like to see 3 or 4 million, but it's going to be about 1.5 million. Unemployment rate this time next year, 9%. So some improvements, but still very high. And we will only go back to normal job market condition in about 5 years from now, based on current pace of economic expansion. And the interest rate will be somewhat higher. Home values, no meaningful change. Home sales could be choppy, but it depends on the consumer psychology, hard to determine. Commercial markets steadily improving. And the alternative possibility is that if there is a high inflation, again, so much printing of the money, producer prices are very high, even though consumer prices tame. Alternative is, if there's a high inflation, there would be winners and losers. And the winners would be people who are able to hedge against inflation. Gold has been a good hedge, and real estate historically has also been a good hedge. So people who are property owners may hold on during an inflationary time. So you say, well, that may be good for real estate. And the answer is no. For people who want to buy property, they will be left out. So people who are in the business of transaction, helping people become homeowners, that will dry up. So people who are in the game, they will benefit, but people who want to get into the game, they will have difficulty if there is high inflation. So that is again, high inflation is a small probability, but if it was to occur, there will be winners and losers. Winners are property owners. Losers are people who want to buy property at that time. And the deflation, I would say, is a very unlikely scenario. And the final scenario is somehow business spending comes alive and we have much faster economic growth, and you are looking at 3-4 million job creation. And I could see some pent-up demand for housing being released. Right now, there's many people doubled up, many young adults living with parents. But as the economy recovers, 3-4 million jobs, they will seek their own housing unit, whether rental or ownership, and there will be a big boost. So that's another alternative of a vigorous economic growth. So I believe right now we are entering a virtuous cycle. This is my last slide, virtuous cycle, which is that home values are steady. And as a result, foreclosures, I think, has already peaked and will steadily go down. It will be elevated, but at least it will turn downward. Strategic default will lessen as they see home values begin to stabilize. FHA, Fannie and Freddie, I think they will be fine given the recent vintage loan performance. I think it's too tight conditions. Consumer spending opens up. So I think we are moving into this virtuous cycle. The vicious cycle is when home values falls 10%, 15%, and all the things that I put in the bullet point will move in the opposite direction, and things will look very ugly. So thank you very much.